Her committees include the House Armed Services Committee, along with Science, Space, and Technology. Jennifer McClellan represents Virginia's 4th Congressional District. She is joining us on Capitol Hill, a very busy Thursday. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being with us here on The Briefing.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
I want to talk about some of the news of the day in just a moment, but we invited you to come on to talk about the National Defense Authorization Act. This is important, especially if you support the U.S. Membership into NATO. You're one of the chief co-sponsors of the bill. So walk us through the legislation which passed both the House and the Senate and potentially what it means if Donald Trump became the next president.
Well, as you know, NATO has been critical to our national security priorities and the economic stability of the United States and our Western allies, playing an instrumental role in holding a strong response to Putin's war in Ukraine and other challenges around the world. And the former president kept saying he wanted to withdraw us from NATO. This bill makes clear that no president can unilaterally withdraw the United States from NATO. Any such withdrawal would require congressional action, just as any other treaty would. So it protects our membership, it reaffirms our nation's commitment to our global allies, and sends a strong message to aggressors around the world that we remain united in our defense of democracy and democratic values.
Well, let's hear from the former president, because he's been speaking out at town hall meetings, including this from Fox News, about NATO, about our membership into the organization. Let's listen.
Would you be committed to NATO, for example, in a second Trump term?
Depends if they treat us properly. Look, NATO has taken advantage of our country. The European countries took advantage of, I want to use a word starting with an S, but I don't want to do it because I see some young, very good-looking children in the audience, and I assume they're watching on television. But they took advantage of us on trade, and then they took advantage of us on our military protection. Of the 28 countries at the time, only 8 countries were paid up. We were paying the difference. And I went to them, I said, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. And they said, do you mean that? I said, I mean that. And the next day, billions of dollars poured into NATO. The reason they have money right now to prosecute what they're doing with helping Ukraine is because of the money I got them. So, peace through strength.
Congresswoman, as you hear that again on that Fox News town hall, read between the lines. What concerns you the most?
Look, we have seen a rise in fascism and authoritarian, also, wannabe dictators, including the former president. NATO was created out of World War II and our defeat of fascism and dictators who wanted to take over other countries. And it is a very powerful force to not only protect democracy, but to protect against the aggression that continues even today, similar to what we saw in the 1930s and 1940s, to ensure we never face a situation like we did with Hitler and his friends again.
Well, I want to play, and I used this yesterday, but I think it's instructive for the audience to hear that in case they missed it. The source is Sky TV in Great Britain. The interview is with the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, and Trevor Phillips is the presenter, as they say in Great Britain, or the anchor, talking about some of the threats that he can see in 2024. Listen to the first half of the answer and then his political response.
What are the 2 big threats that we ought to be paying attention to in 2024?
Well, seen from an intelligence perspective, the 2 things we need to worry about are obviously Ukraine and what China's long-term behavior globally is going to be, particularly in relation to Taiwan, and how threatening China is to Western interests. But I think it's important, but I'm not a politician. You have to add a political threat, which I'm worried about, which is Trump's re-election, which I think for the UK's national security is problematic, because if Trump, as it were, acts hastily and damages the Atlantic Alliance, that is a big deal for the UK. We've put all our eggs in defense terms in the NATO basket. If Trump really is serious about, as it were, changing the balance. I mean, the American nuclear umbrella for Europe is, in my view, essential to Europe's security and defense.
Again, that is Sir Richard Dearlove. He is the former head of MI6. As you hear that, Congresswoman McClellan, clearly there is concern in Europe about America's future in NATO.
I wholeheartedly agree that the biggest threats that we face are Putin and his attempts to put the former Soviet Union back together at the expense of independent nations. And we saw in the 1930s and 40s that if that type of aggression goes unchecked, it continues. It would send a signal. If Putin were to succeed in the Ukraine, it would send a signal to the Chinese that they can feel free to move forward with their aggression in Taiwan or elsewhere, and that domestically and politically, the biggest threat to both democracy here in America and to our role in helping to protect democracies around the world and to protect against fascist invasion would be a Trump election.
And clearly the fact that your resolution that was also supported by Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, both Democratic senators from the Commonwealth of Virginia, it passing overwhelmingly indicates that Congress is also concerned about this, which is why it is now likely to become the law of the land.
That's right. I mean, traditionally, our armed services and national security have been nonpartisan, and Democrats and Republicans have focused on ensuring that we are in the best position not only to defend American interests here, but American interests abroad and our NATO allies and democracies around the world and fight against aggression. That has traditionally not been partisan, which is why you saw not only the NATO resolution pass, but the NDAA come out of committee 58-1 here in the House. It's not until extreme MAGA Republicans got their hands on it that it got bogged down into partisan fighting, and ultimately cooler heads prevailed, and we focused more on our national security and ensuring our role in protecting democracies around the world. So hopefully we will continue to do that.
Can you remind our listeners of what the debate was like on the House and Senate floor before it passed?
The NDAA and all, or the NATO resolution?
The NATO component of NDAA.
Well, it didn't get very much debate, honestly. I think because it was such a no-brainer for us. I did not see what the debate was in the Senate. The NDAA overall got bogged down not in the things you would expect a debate around, whether it be NATO or how many ships are we going to build, or are we going to provide our service members access to health care and quality housing. None of the debates you would have expected to happen around these issues happened. The debate got bogged down in whether service members should have DEI training, whether students should learn a complete and accurate history of our country and its history with racism in DOD schools, whether our service members should have comprehensive access to health care, including reproductive health care. So the debate wasn't about what it should have been about to begin with.
We're talking to Representative Jennifer McClellan and the president signing that into law just before Christmas on December the 23rd. Let's talk about what's happening today in the next couple of hours. The Senate moving ahead on a CR, the House likely to move either tonight or tomorrow. Weather may be a factor. And that basically kicks the can down the road for another couple of weeks for a new deadline in early March. How is this going to be resolved, Congresswoman? And how do you make sure that we don't keep going through these crisis points where you have CR after CR instead of just passing a budget on time?
Well, we need House Republicans to focus on doing their job of making the government function. Instead, from day one of this Congress, they have really turned this place to a three-ring circus with infighting with their baseless impeachment inquiries, with chaotic committee hearings, with an extreme agenda pushed by a dozen or so extreme MAGA Freedom Caucus members who have brought this place to a grinding halt. Speaker McCarthy couldn't control them. Speaker Johnson is facing a real crisis of having to decide, is he going to try to govern the country, or is he going to try to govern a caucus that is ungovernable? And if in a divided government with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president, he needs to recognize that compromise is not a dirty word, that the American people expect us to work together to solve their problems and help them and fund critical services to do just that. And the sooner he focuses on that, rather than trying to appease the chaos wing of his caucus, the better off we all will be.
Some on the Republican side, Marjorie Taylor Greene threatening possibly another motion to vacate, Chip Roy kind of toying with that idea on Fox News. It's not happening, but clearly some of your more conservative Republican colleagues are not happy with another CR. They're not happy with his negotiations with the White House. It is divided government. So why has this become such a bad word? Why has compromise become so difficult?
Unfortunately, we have too many people here who are more focused on scoring political points, getting on television, and clicks on social media than they are serving the American people. The vast majority of us, though, are here to put people over politics and function. And I think, again, as soon as the speaker decides, I am the Speaker of the House of the United States, who is here to do the business that the American people want us to do, and not placate a former president or 12 to 20 people in a caucus that has proven itself ungovernable.
You're a freshman representative in the House. What's it been like the first year for you? You're laughing.
Not quite a year yet. Not quite a year. I came in a special in March, but I have enjoyed it. The chaos notwithstanding, I spent 18 years as a state legislator, and now to be able to help people on this grander scale. I tell people it feels a little bit like I graduated high school and went to college, and I'm just now able to help people at a higher level. And again, I'm focused on doing just that rather than getting bogged down in the circus that some of my colleagues want to continue.
Well, Congresswoman, we really appreciate you being with us here on SiriusXM POTUS. Representative Jennifer McClellan from the 4th Congressional District in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Are there 3 Commonwealths? I know Pennsylvania,
4,
Kentucky, and Virginia. Who's the 4th?
Massachusetts.
Of course. Nate Sweet, my producer. How could I forget? Hey, Congresswoman, thank you so much, and thank you for that education on Commonwealths, 4 of them in the U.S. We appreciate it.
We were the first. Thank you.